Part 49. Fantasy, Me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 482. Support the underworld. For TNG Tower, which is above all the heavens and worlds, this possibility is not impossible, because in the long run, the potential of the underworld is obviously unquestionable. After all, the original underworld had already swept through the heavens once. This time, if you have the help of the TNG host who can deduce the future, who else is the opponent of the underworld? I am afraid the powerful people in the world who want to follow the example again and use the methods used to deal with the underworld will be ineffective in front of the master of TNG, because the master of TNG already knows everything before they take action. Why on earth did the seniors do this? Taishu glanced at the Xianguang realm rumbling from the chaos, and closed his eyes in despair. The arrival of the base camp of the underworld was no longer something he could resist. In other words, just a black gold ancient ship, he could unable to stop it. Not to mention, the entire Xianguang realm. Are you here yet? In the Xianguang realm. In a large hall. The lord of the underworld stood tall. He stepped forward and came to the sky. His figure was majestic, like a mountain, suppressing the four ends of the world. His deep eyes looked at the earthly immortal realm not far away behind him. There were many figures who looked like gods and demons, standing respectfully. They were as motionless as a mountain, but there was a terrifying aura rushing out, as if it could run through the past, present and future, and spread across all the heavens and worlds, making people unable to afford anything. The idea of resisting. It is really terrible. Every one of them is so powerful that it makes people tremble. When their eyes open and close, cold light bursts out. There is no emotion, and they are indifferent to the extreme. In their eyes looking at the earthly fairy world, there is a undisguised murderous intent. As if looking at a swarm of ants. Is this the hometown of Taishu? Have no idea. What is the deep meaning of that immortal king in bringing the Xianguang realm here? On the surface, this world seems to be a bit ridiculously weak. A powerful creature spoke, and his voice was like a bell, roaring in the void. Maybe he wanted the underworld to dominate this world. After all, the underworld swept the heavens back then and was unstoppable. It was reasonable for some immortal kings to have good intentions towards the underworld. Another person in the immortal realm said in a deep voice. His eyes were stern and his hair was flying. He was like the sky. He was the only one with an invincible aura. A mere immortal world was not taken seriously by him at all. As for, he has been taken into consideration. Taishu, who was completely severely injured, is not worth mentioning. As long as he is willing, he can kill Taishu with one hand at any time. Although this realm is weak, the world level seems to be not low. After merging with the Xianguang realm, even if it cannot be compared with the Tianyan realm back then, it is probably not far behind. These people's eyesight is not bad. They have been practicing for countless years. In just a moment, many people seem to have grasped the deep meaning of the immortal king. That's right. The immortal king has never shown his face. He probably wants to. He had to secretly help the underworld, and then a powerful world was sent to the underworld. Is the main purpose the creatures of this world? Obviously not. The other party's deep intention is probably to integrate the mysterious light world with this world. Then let the underworld take this world as its foundation, and then make an overall jump. At that time, if there are several immortal kings in the underworld, who else can resist it? Even some supreme worlds will probably have to weigh it when encountering the underworld. For a moment, after all, they have the immortal king. Even if they can't defeat them, they can still step into the long river of time. In other years, they can rest for a while and come back to fight again, and they are still good men. It can be said that after becoming the immortal king, the underworld is to some extent, generally speaking, it is already in an invincible position. Unless someone of the immortal emperor level takes action, but when the underworld was at its most powerful, there were only 2 such people in the world. Are there still there now? No people can guarantee it. There is a high probability that there is no such thing. From this point of view, the immortal king is our friend from the underworld. Maybe he is still one of the few remaining ghost kings from the underworld in the past. A figure said softly. In the underworld back then, there was an immortal emperor who was in charge. As for the immortal king level figures, I don't know how many there are. Even if there is one person, it is reasonable to survive by luck. This possibility cannot be ruled out. Everyone nodded. Obviously. They also think that this statement is more reliable. Lord, since the immortal king sent us here, we in the underworld should take action. 10 days may be enough to destroy such a weak world. A voice wearing armor said respectfully. Not urgent. The Lord of the underworld raised one hand and pressed it down with one hand. He glanced at the immortal world with deep eyes and said softly, this world may not be as simple as we think. Everyone is confused. What does the Lord mean by this? Isn't the world in front of you clear at a glance? There are only a few characters in the real fairyland. For them, they can kill with one finger, so what else can be hidden? Strong? Absolutely not. That immortal king wants to go against the underworld. If that immortal king is hostile to the underworld, in the chaos, he has countless opportunities to directly turn the Xianguang realm into powder. Even they themselves can't escape at all. Why waste so much effort to pull Xianguang realm over and attack them? In this world, even I can't see through it. It seems that there are some unknown things hidden, and from the mouths of the creatures below, I heard a name that they highly respected. Seem. This person has a very high status in their hearts. The Lord of the underworld said softly. His spiritual thoughts were like a tide, sweeping across the entire earthly immortal world. In one breath, he had almost mastered all the basic information of the entire world. Even some conversations in the true immortal realm could not escape their detection. In the conversations between these people, the 4 words he heard the most were, Master Tianji. Could it be that this person is the immortal king who brought the Xianguang realm over? Someone said doubtfully. That possibility cannot be ruled out. The Lord of the underworld's eyes were cold. He raised his head and looked into the depths of the earthly immortal realm, and said softly, this master of Tianji is a bit interesting. He seems to be very powerful. If we can recruit him into the underworld, it would be a good thing. If this is the case, does the Lord mean that we should stand still for the time being? A shadowy figure said with a frown. Facing a world that is not as powerful as one's own, many people in the underworld are salivating in their hearts. Just quietly watching the other party's development is not the way of the underworld. After the 2 worlds merge, it will not be too late to take action. The Lord of the underworld said lightly, with the current foundation of this world, even if we give them 1,000,000 years, they will not be able to compare with the Xianguang realm. And just the resurrection of some undead has already made them miserable. How can they still cope with our Xianguang realm? Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 483. Boom. The deafening roar is endless. Every living being is trembling in his heart. Whether it is the earthly immortal realm or the Xianguang realm, there are mostly ordinary creatures in these 2 worlds. They are the only ones who still don't know what happened. I just feel that the earth under my feet and the sky above my head are all shaking. Occasionally, there are bright stars falling in the void, with long tail flames, creating deep pits one after another, as if the end of the world it's normal to arrive. Boom. The loud noise was heard again, and the distance between the 2 worlds was getting closer and closer. The terrifying wind blew across the wilderness, turning countless mountains into powder. Although Li Yun had tried his best to reduce the aftermath. The smallest, but there are still small areas that are affected by handwriting. After all, this is the fusion of two worlds, not a small fight. If you want to smoothly integrate the two worlds, it is estimated that only the immortal emperor can do this. The world is coming together. The lord of the underworld looked down and said softly, "Yes." Someone nearby looked at the earthly immortal realm and said jokingly, "The world is merging together. In front of our Xianguang realm, there is a smooth road, unstoppable. Maybe, just by resurrecting those creatures, we can push them across the world." In fact, this is exactly the case. The reason why the Xianguang realm was unified by the underworld at the beginning is that the underworld summoned the dead souls and used them for its own use. With such a terrifying power, the Xianguang realm cannot stop it at all. As a last resort, countless strong men chose to leave the Xianguang realm and go to other worlds to cause trouble. In this way, the only remaining people are not even the opponents of the underworld. They will either surrender or be suppressed and killed, and then still surrendered to the underworld and used by the underworld. A few weak worlds are really not worth taking seriously. Someone shook his head and said. As soon as the words fell, boom. As if the sky was falling apart, the Xianguang realm and the earthly immortal realm collided with each other. At the junction of the two realms, the mountains collapsed and earth and rocks flew. Countless cracks appeared at the junction, towards the outside spread crazily, and even the world barrier was pretended to be a fan at this moment. The two worlds were forcibly spliced together by the most direct means. Seeing this picture is like the end of the world. Underworld, the creatures were speechless for a long time. They could make the two worlds merge without damaging the fundamental means. They asked themselves, what they couldn't do. Even if they could do it, the creatures in the two worlds would suffer heavy losses. And the palm of the hand, the master not only did it, he even eliminated the aftermath with a flip of his hand. He minimized the danger. Gudong. A creature from the underworld swallowed and murmured, "This method should not be used by someone who has just joined the immortal king, at least it must be a giant among the immortal kings." In their opinion, only old monsters who have lived for countless years have the ability to do this. Maybe more than that. The lord of the underworld fell from the sky and stood at the junction of the two realms. He looked forward and said softly, "I can feel that before the Xianguang realm, there are several other worlds that are merged together. Maybe, our Xianguang world was not the first to merge. The person who took action in secret most likely wanted to create a supreme world. His ambition may be greater than the underworld. The difference can be clearly seen at the junction of the earthly immortal realm and the purple Xian realm. After all, the earthly immortal realm is an entire land mass, while the purple Xian realm is a world where billions of stars condense. These two worlds are completely different. As long as you are not a fool, you can see something wrong at a glance. In the same world, there will never be such a big difference. There is only one possibility that can explain this situation, and that is that these two worlds are originally mutual, independent. It's just that they were forcibly spliced together by a terrifying figure. Lord. Hearing these words, the faces of the creatures in the underworld turned ugly, and they said in a deep voice, "If you say so, isn't it possible that the immortal king is not our senior in the underworld? When did I say that the immortal king was a creature from the underworld?" The lord of the underworld snorted coldly. "My lord, do you think this immortal king who took action in secret could be the master of Tianji that the creatures in the earthly and immortal world say?" Someone said in a deep voice. Now that the two worlds have merged, the entire earthly immortal world has lost many secrets to them. Some of the conversations between the great sages and the quasi-emperors can be easily detected by them. Naturally, the four words Tianji Luzu, it's no longer a secret. Uncertain. The lord of the underworld shook his head, his eyes were watery, and he said lightly, "Before the Xianguang realm merges, this world cannot accommodate existences above the immortal king. In my opinion, These people are just frogs in a well. As an immortal king, how could he stay in such a weak world? As for the owner of the Tianji Tower, he may just be a being who is good at deducing the secrets of the universe. Given time, you can lead your elite men to the Tianji Tower and bring him here. Our underworld is currently lacking a person who is good at deducing heavenly secrets. Yes. Everyone in the rear said respectfully. Lord, what about this earthly immortal world? Someone asked. Hearing this, the Lord of the underworld turned his head slightly, glanced at the man, chuckled, and said lightly, from today on, there is no earthly immortal realm. The reality of the earth immortal realm is clear to their eyes. There is no place at all that deserves their careful treatment. Only in the Tianyuan realm, there is a Tianji tower that they cannot see through. In such a tyrannical world, there is only such a special place. I have to say that it is the sorrow of this world. Although the Tianji building is not bad, how can the underworld be bad? The Tianji building is like the sky, which is almost the same as the underworld. If the Tianji building can clearly see the situation, it will naturally surrender to the underworld. If you can't see clearly, the aircraft building will have only one way to perish. Anyway, the dead can also serve the underworld. After hearing the words of the Lord of the underworld, everyone in the underworld looked happy. They knew, this is my master, who is about to take action against the earth immortal realm. Sure enough. The next moment, the Lord of the underworld opened his mouth and ordered you, lead the elites of the underworld, and wipe out all those who do not surrender in this world. After this world is stabilized, I will create 6 reincarnations here. In the future, this world will have only one name, and that is the underworld. And the underworld will become the destination of all souls, attracting the souls of the dead in the sky. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 484. Boom. There was a loud noise that shook the sky. In the Xianguang realm, countless elites rose into the sky, carrying the black mist, and surged forward. All of a sudden, they flooded the land hundreds of thousands of miles around. Just like Wangyangju, like a dike, endless. Looking around, there are soldiers from the underworld everywhere in the sky and on the ground, holding spears and armor. These people are really terrifying. Before they get close, they give people an irresistible pressure. This for a moment, even the great emperor felt as small as an ant, his body trembled involuntarily, and he wanted to escape from the immortal world. Roar! At this time, a huge centipede rushed out of the mountains. Its body was hundreds of miles long, like a black dragon, winding and circling, smashing countless mountains. His body was filled with terrifying blood energy, and he fled frantically into the distance. This is a ferocious beast at the level of a great saint. At this moment, it feels the fatal danger and does not dare to stay on the edge of the earthly immortal world. But his front foot just appeared. A spear flew from the sky on its back foot. Through the clouds and the moon. With a harsh roar, it penetrated everything and nailed it directly to the ground. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not escape the spear's killing blow. Bang! The spear shook, and boundless power spread out. The centipede was directly shaken into a bloody mist. The whole process lasted less than a blink of an eye. A great saint-level ferocious beast completely disappeared. This scene fell into the eyes of many creatures in the earthly immortal world. Their bodies trembled, and they felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. They wanted to escape, but they were not able to move faster than the elites from the underworld. What was waiting for them was endless chaos. Massacre. In just half a day, the earthly immortal realm fell tens of millions of miles around, and half of the earthly immortal realm fell into the hands of the Xianguang realm. This speed of fall far exceeded the original speed of the Zixuan realm's fall. If this continues, it will probably take less than 3 or 2 days before the entire earthly immortal world will cease to exist. It's over. An old saint said sadly. The Xianguang realm is too terrifying. Even the immortal realm senior just now couldn't stop him. He could only flee towards the Tianyuan realm. How can the remaining people resist? Head to Zixuan realm. This is not impossible, but it is estimated that it won't be long before the Xianguang realm will kill the Zixuan realm. Where can they escape to? Senior Master Tianji, did you really abandon our immortal world? A great emperor looked in the direction of Tianyuan world. But at this time, Tianyuan world was extremely quiet, without any movement. With the ability of Tianji building master, it is impossible not to know what is happening in the earthly immortal world. The current situation can only be said to be the owner of Tianji has acquiesced. Let's go, leave the earthly immortal realm first and go to the Zixuan realm to cause trouble. An old leader said helplessly. How could they have thought that not long ago, the person who was still aloof and did not take Zixuan realm to heart would suddenly become a bereaved dog and even lose his own world? Now Zixuan the world is not peaceful either, and many creatures have been resurrected. But in any case, it is much stronger than the earthly immortal realm. When the Xianguang realm merges, the earthly immortal realm is the first to bear the brunt. They can't stop it at all. They can even take down a person in the immortal realm. Not coming out, the only person who stood up to resist. It seems that he is not a creature in the earthly fairy world. At the same time, the junction of Zixuan realm and Tianyuan realm. An embarrassed figure turned into a stream of light and moved forward quickly. This person was none other than Taishu. He had been seriously injured, but as a sword cultivator, he was still extremely fast, leaving behind the great power of the Xianguang realm behind him. In the beginning, now, where can you escape? Someone sneered. This man is one of the few living creatures in the underworld. He is tall and tall, with an ancient tower rising and falling above his head, blooming with thousands of divine lights. Every ray of divine light can penetrate the sky, shattering the stars, extremely terrifying. Beside him, there are 2 figures from the underworld immortality realm following him. This is to prevent any mistakes. After all, if one person chases down, there is still the possibility of being unable to stop Taishu. If he is allowed to do it again, if you run away, the underworld will be completely spread out. Do you think that if the senior master of Tianji Hall brings Xianguang realm over, there will be no way to check and balance it? You must know that those who do many unjust things will be punished by death. Taishu said in a cold voice. Oh? The person who spoke just now raised his eyebrows and said jokingly, really, if the Xianguang realm is really brought here by the Tianji building master, I would like to see the methods of the Tianji building master. But if not, talk about this. The man smiled jokingly and said in a cold voice, then you can't blame me. Obviously. He didn't quite believe what Taishu said. After all, whether it is the earthly immortal realm or the Tianyuan realm, the levels of these 2 worlds are laid out here. After merging, they are barely on par with the Xianguang realm. It is difficult for such a world to accommodate several immortal level characters. How could there be a fairy king? Now that Taishu is carrying out the Tianji building master, he just wants to find a way out for himself. If he is really frightened by him, I am afraid he will have to live in the ridicule of others for the rest of his life. Sooner or later you will regret what you did today. Taishu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. You don't need to worry about this. The man said something in a cold voice, and struck out with one hand. The sky suddenly shattered. He took a step forward and traveled hundreds of millions of miles in an instant. He used some unknown secret method. He quickly reached Taishu. Boom! Taishu took action to resist, and the 2 figures shot straight into the sky, submerged into the sky, and entered the chaos, starting a shocking battle. The terrifying aftermath was violent from time to time, and the entire Tianyuan world was shaken by it. I don't know how many people felt their hearts beating. It's really terrible. It's like a world-ending catastrophe, spreading outside the territory, sweeping the Tianyuan world so quickly. In the Golden Crow clan, the ancestor of the Golden Crow looked up at the sky, his old eyes were extremely solemn. Not long ago, he used the formation within the clan to reluctantly send the extremely resurrected ancestor out of the ancestral land. But not long after, received the news that another world has merged. After sending people to the TNG tower to inquire, they soon learned the truth of the matter, that is, a force called Underworld was launching an attack on the earthly immortal world. Even the Tianyuan world, the resurrection of the dead, was all the work of the Underworld. When he learned the news, his heart was undoubtedly heavy, but fortunately, it would not affect the Tianyuan world for a while. But what he never expected was that not long after that, on the same day, before the Tianyuan world calmed down, there were terrifying people who came to the Tianyuan world. They even started fighting outside the territory. This is undoubtedly sending a signal to all the creatures in the Tianyuan world. That is, the underworld has already spread its tentacles, reaching out to the Tianyuan world. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 485. In the Tianyuan world, several terrifying figures were fighting each other non-stop, looming, with immortal power sweeping into the world, causing countless people below to tremble. Not even the people in the Earth immortal realm can withstand this kind of power, let alone the people in the Tianyuan realm. Half a day later, finally, a figure flew down in the sky and landed not far from Dawang City. Taishu was covered in blood. He had just recovered from his injuries and was a few minutes heavier again. One of his arms was beaten into powder. The blood kept flowing and dyed the ground under his feet red. The tragic atmosphere is filling the air. Everyone who stayed in the deserted city saw this scene. Everyone couldn't help but close their eyes, unable to bear to watch the next scene. Too early, your road is over. The underworld wants to kill people, and no one can hide. Even if the immortal king comes today, he can't protect you at all. In the void, several stalwart figures gradually came down. They were calm and confident of victory. At the moment, Taishu was in a very good state. Okay, don't talk about running for your life. Even if they take action again, Taishu can completely destroy themselves without them having to take action themselves. Ah! Taishu twitched the corners of his lips and smiled bitterly, but he didn't say a word. Hit the road. The leader raised one hand and slowly lowered it. Just when he was about to take action, a golden light suddenly flashed out and flew out of the great desert city, blocking Taishu's body and bending down to hold the opponent back. He helped him up. The person who came was a middle-aged man, wearing a golden crown and a golden robe, with glow flowing all over his body, and a powerful aura escaping, shining like a blazing sun. Place it somewhere else, he may be considered a strong man. But in the eyes of a few people in the underworld, he is no different from an ant. Interesting. The leader sneered and said indifferently, does a mere saint dare to go against the underworld? This is a deserted city, not a place where you can run wild. The person who came was none other than the leader of the Golden Crow clan. He came to Dawang City on the orders of his ancestors. After going to the TNG Tower, he received instructions from the owner of the TNG Tower. He left the city to take Taishu back. If others let him come, he definitely didn't dare to come, but the owner of TNG opened his mouth and gave him great confidence, let alone facing a few people in the immortal realm. Even facing several immortal kings, he was not timid at all. Dawang City. The people in the underworld looked at each other. When they came, they checked the news about the Tianyuan world. Naturally, the word TNG Tower could not be hidden from their ears. However, the strength of the owner of the TNG Tower, they couldn't tell. At least there was no terrifying atmosphere in the deserted city in front of them. There was only an attic that they couldn't see through. Just because they can't see through it doesn't mean that the master of TNG must be stronger than them. Thinking that there was such a behemoth from the underworld standing behind them, they quickly felt confident. The leader took a step forward and said indifferently, "The master of TNG didn't dare to come forward, so did he send you out to die?" Buzz. The terrifying aura, like a mountain torrent, swept across the sky and the earth in an instant. Within tens of thousands of miles, the earth sank, mountains collapsed, and smoke filled the air. It was a scene of world destruction. Even the mountain protection formation of Dawang City was at this moment all were fully activated, and countless symbols flickered, like billions of stars, extremely gorgeous. "You can try." The leader of the Golden Crow clan carried Teishu on his back and said in a deep voice. "Whatever." The leader glanced at Dawang City and saw no intention of taking action from Master Tianji. He felt more confident. With this appearance, it is no surprise that Master Tianji must be afraid. Since the other party is coward. Then he was no longer afraid. He grabbed it with one hand, and the palm covered the sky, as if rushing out of the long river of time. The chaotic aura lingered between the palms, and endless stars were rotating. Like the palm of God, he grabbed it downwards. Compared with this palm, the leader of the Golden Crow clan was like an ant, not proportional at all. The moment the palm was grasped, inside the Tianji Tower, zheng, a piano sound sounded. As if the strings of the great avenue were being shaken, 3 sword lights appeared automatically in the void. The sword lights were like rainbows, cutting through the eternal tranquility and reappearing the true meaning of the creation of the world. It was like a god wielding a sword, emerging from the chaos. Awakening, unparalleled sharpness. This sound of the piano triggered the supreme swordsmanship. The use of the piano into the sword amazed countless people. It was unparalleled and shocked the past and present. Wherever the sword light passed, it was invincible. It was as if time had stopped at this moment. It is simply difficult to compete. Each sword light is only 3 feet long, but the aura it exudes is invincible. Even those in the immortal realm feel that the god of death is waving at them. Is this the owner of Tianji? The leader's scalp was numb, and he was horrified. He looked at the 3 long swords, and the souls of the dead were coming out. There had never been any moment when he felt that he was so close to death. Immortal king, he is definitely an immortal king. The Xianguang realm was fused by him. This news must be reported to the Lord immediately. The leader shouted. But before he finished speaking, poof, poof, poof. The sound of 3 pieces of cloth being torn was heard, and the scene was frozen. After the sword light passed through the 3 people, it slowly dissipated, but the bodies of the 3 people froze. They seemed to be fixed in the void, motionless. Like a sculpture. Only a pair of pupils are gradually expanding. Except for the leader, the other 2 are yin spirits. They were also killed in an instant, but their souls were fixed by an inexplicable method as before. In the void. As if sending a signal to the underworld. This. Teishu, who was lying on the back of the Golden Crow clan leader, looked at the scene in front of him with great disbelief. The 3 people who were no weaker than him just now died like this? Dead and powerless to resist? In other words, if the owner of Tianji wanted to kill him, wouldn't it be that simple? This is too scary. And these are people from the underworld. If you kill a living person, they will be resurrected as undead. If you kill an undead, they will be reborn again. Why is there no sign of resurrection after being killed by the owner of Tianji? Senior Tianji poster, how did you do it? Teishu couldn't calm down for a long time. You must know that the original Xianguang realm was defeated by the indestructible ability of the underworld. If this characteristic of the underworld can be solved, the underworld is actually not that scary. Senior is good at deducing the secrets of heaven. Can it be said that he can even deduce the weaknesses of the underworld? If this is the case, the strength of the senior Tianji building master may not be as simple as the immortal king. Taishu thought silently in his heart. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 486. In the mysterious light world. In a large hall. The lord of the underworld is sitting in it. He is like a demon king, standing high above, looking down at the heavens and the world. His eyes are open and closed, and a cold light is shining out. A supreme aura circulated around him. Although the Xianguang realm has just merged, the level of the world has already begun to change subtly, and this speed cannot be rushed. It will take at least a few years. But even though it had just begun, he had already keenly discovered the differences in the world. Even his body began to emit a ray of supreme, heaven and earth decay, and I am immortal aura, which belongs to the power of the immortal king. If nothing else happens, when the Xianguang realm is completely integrated with this world, that is when he officially sets foot in the realm of the immortal king. He has been waiting for this day for too long. In the past, he might not be in a hurry. After all, hundreds of thousands of years have passed. In the last 1 or 2 years, it is okay to wait. But now, it's different. The reason why the Xianguang realm is in this situation is because an unknown supreme immortal king gave it to them. If the other party can give it to them, they can naturally take it back. As the lord of the underworld, he always sticks to his word and sticks to his word. He doesn't like the feeling that his fate is in the hands of others. So, he desperately wanted to take the final step. Only by becoming an immortal king can we reverse the current passive situation. How are things going in the earthly immortal realm going? The lord of the underworld spoke. The voice echoed in the empty hall. Not long after, the void was distorted, and a black mist slowly emerged. A black shadow in the middle knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, everything smoothly." Within 2 days, nearly half of the earthly immortal realm has fallen into my hands. Anyone who doesn't surrender will be killed. Just kill all 4 words. The moment it appeared, there seemed to be a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The entire earth immortal realm was vast. I don't know how many creatures exist. It is impossible for them all to surrender to the underworld, and their fate, it is conceivable. Very good. The lord of the underworld nodded with satisfaction. This speed was within his expectations. After all, no one in the earthly immortal world could resist them. It would not be a problem to occupy the earthly immortal world in 5 days. As for the other worlds, it would cost 1 at most month, that's about it. If this was done in the past, it would have been unimaginable. In order to occupy the Xianguang realm, the underworld spent more than 5,000 years. I don't know how much power was lost in it before it unified the entire world. But here, it was so effortless. It can be said that the unknown immortal king gave them a big gift from the underworld. I would like to report to my lord, my subordinates discovered something incredible when they were attacking the earthly immortal realm. The voice in the black mist said respectfully. Oh. The lord of the underworld became interested and asked curiously, "What's the matter?" Through the investigation of the subordinates, it was discovered that there seemed to be an underworld in the earthly fairy world. And when the lord of the underworld heard this, an awe-inspiring light flashed in his eyes, and he asked in a deep voice, "And what?" As the founder of the underworld in the Xianguang realm, he once received an inheritance from the underworld, and it was precisely because of this inheritance. He rose against the odds. According to the records passed down in his hands. Among all the heavens and worlds, he is as lucky as himself. but he is not the only one. Others may also establish the underworld, and there may even be someone who obtains a more complete inheritance than himself. Both are descendants of the underworld, and no one wants to share their inheritance with others. After all, in the future, the underworld will follow the heavens. It is impossible for there to be two or even more lords of the underworld to issue orders together. There can only be one person who can control everything. Therefore, if they are both descendants of the underworld and meet each other, only one of them is destined to survive. And as far as I know, although the founder of the underworld is not very powerful, he seems to have a world in his hands, and he even created the 6 paths of reincarnation. The figure in the black mist murmured. 6 paths of reincarnation is no stranger to them. Our Lord has been thinking about it for many years and has been talking about establishing it, but until now, there has been no movement. At first everyone thought, the Lord is short of some materials. But now it seems that it is not like that. A mere Hades emperor in the earthly immortal realm has created the underworld and established the 6 paths of reincarnation. How could they not build this kind of thing when their Xianguang realm is so vast and rich in resources? There is only one explanation for the situation. That is that the 6 paths of reincarnation in the hands of his master is most likely not perfect. That's why he delayed it until now. You mean the 6 paths of reincarnation? The Lord of the underworld spoke indifferently, with a trace of unconcealable excitement hidden in his calm voice. Just as the Black Shadow guessed, the 6 paths of reincarnation in his hand was not perfect, but didn't someone come to the door? Good. The Black Shadow nodded and said respectfully. Very good. The Lord of the underworld slowly uttered 2 words. He raised his head, looked into the distance, and murmured this time, the world merges, and the surprises I get are far beyond my expectations. Maybe. It won't be long before I can establish the 6 paths of reincarnation. The Lord of the underworld murmured. The 6 paths of reincarnation is the true foundation of the underworld. With this, not to mention a Xianguang realm, it is all the worlds. All creatures will be pulled over by them and thrown into the 6 paths of reincarnation. At that time, no one can escape from the control of the underworld after being reborn. It is precisely because of this that the underworld was besieged by all realms. After all, no one's life will be controlled by others after death. Just in the underworld, Lord, when I was thinking about it, a creature wearing armor flew in quickly. As soon as he came in, he said loudly, Lord, something bad is going on. The Lord of the underworld frowned and said coldly, what happened? It's Teishu. The figure wearing armor murmured. Teishu. The Lord of the underworld's frown deepened. He was very puzzled. Hasn't this person been severely injured? Such a person can be crushed to death by any person in the immortality realm he sends out. Considering that Teishu with his profound strength, he also sent 3 immortals. This can be said to be a sure win. Is it possible that there will be an accident? Or rather, Teishu did not want to be caught, so he chose to self-destruct, and finally took the 3 people he sent out. Perished together? In this case, it is a pity. Self-destruction is different from others, it is a one and done, nothing is left. Even with their vast magical power, they cannot resurrect him. But the 3 people who were shot out by themselves, it shouldn't be a problem. They are immortal anyway. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 487. Yes, in the beginning he, not dead. Instead, the figure wearing armor had a look of fear on his face, and he was constantly thinking about what to say next. What's the opposite? The Lord of the Underworld's voice became colder and he shouted sternly. On the contrary, the three immortal realm Taoist friends who were chasing Taishu all died. The figure wearing armor said with an ugly expression. If I remember correctly. Before, he had severely injured Taishu. Although Taishu ran away, no one cared about him. How could Taishu, who was dying, be able to change the world if he was alone? Now it seems that Taishu not only turned things upside down, but also caused a big mess. All three realms of immortality have fallen. Who dares to believe this? Fallen. Hearing the last three words, the Lord of the Underworld felt a chill in his heart for no reason. He said in a deep voice, how could he fall? It has almost become an ironclad fact that people in the underworld are immortal. Not only him, but even a small soldier firmly believed in this. Suddenly, three people in the immortal realm died, leaving him alone. Time is hard to accept. It is absolutely true that the three fellow Taoists have indeed fallen. The man in armor said firmly. It was this incident that made him feel uneasy. Now it seems that the creatures in the underworld are not impossible to kill at all. At least three people are dead now. Where did they fall? The Lord of the Underworld asked. Tianyuan World, Dawang City. The figure wearing armor spat out 6 words. Tianyuan Realm, Dawang City. The Lord of the Underworld narrowed his eyes slightly. This place is very familiar to him. After all, whether it is the earthly immortal world or the purple mysterious world, there are countless creatures in every world. The deserted city has become a holy place in my mind. The most critical factor is that there is an extremely terrifying figure hidden in the city. That is the master of Tianji. This person is extremely mysterious. No one knows his specific strength. In the past, many people speculated that the other party was just a great emperor, but later, the strength of the master Tianji was revealed little by little. Countless people were slapped in the face. Over time, no one guessed the strength of the master Tianji. As long as remember, the owner of Tianji is synonymous with invincibility, so just don't mess with him. Did the owner of Tianji take action? The Lord of the Underworld murmured. If it was really Lord Tianji who took action, I'm afraid things would not be that simple. Maybe he had misjudged the strength of Lord Tianji. It is very possible that, as the creatures of the earthly immortal world said, Lord Tianji he is the mastermind behind the fusion of this world. Lord, do you want to send someone to Tianji Tower to test the details of the owner of Tianji Tower? The figure wearing armor asked. Not urgent. The Lord of the Underworld waved his hands, with a heavy expression on his face. He took a deep breath and said softly, pass my order to have all the elites of the underworld stop all movements and not make any unusual movements. Ah! The figure wearing armor was a little unable to react for a moment. Seeing that the earthly immortal world was about to be unified by the underworld, why did his master back down at this critical moment? This is not his master's style. Is it because of the owner of Tianji? The figure wearing armor asked in a low voice. My intuition tells me that the master of Tianji is not that simple. We can unify the current several worlds at any time, and there is no rush for this moment. The Lord of the Underworld squinted from the corner of his eyes and said calmly, it's fine if the Lord of Tianji is not the immortal king. If he is really the immortal king and the main promoter of world integration, then the problem will be huge. Every step we take next can be said to be walking on a cliff. One wrong step and you will be doomed. Only by taking the last step can I control the fate of the underworld in my own hands. At that time, I will personally go to the Tianji Tower. Take a look, who is the master of Tianji? I have to say. The Lord of the Underworld was very cautious in his approach. Facing the extremely mysterious master Tianji, he did not take any aggressive measures. Even when 3 of his subordinates died, he did not pursue it. Instead, he treated it as if it had not happened. Just wait for the day when you can break through. Can. In the underworld, 3 immortals have fallen. If we don't pay attention, this will be detrimental to the reputation of the underworld. The figure wearing armor murmured. The prestige of the underworld. The lord of the underworld sneered and said disdainfully, how can fame be more important than life? As long as the seat lasts, the prestige of the underworld will not be lost at all. In the previous underworld, there was an immortal emperor sitting in charge. What was his reputation? Nowadays, where is the underworld of the past? As soon as these words came out, the figure in armor fell silent. He knew that his master was telling the truth. For the sake of worthless prestige, he rashly provoked the mysterious Master Tianji. No matter how he looked at it, it was irrational behavior. After all, they know nothing about the Tianji Tower now. If they really provoke a powerful enemy, the entire underworld is not enough to be slapped to death. It is true that the creatures in the underworld can be reborn, but it also depends on the face. Who, when faced with a person in the immortality realm, they can just mess around, but if the other person is an immortal king, the meaning is different. An immortal king has countless ways to kill them. This is also the shortcoming of the soul-calling bead. Although it can make people reborn, it is only limited to the immortal king, and it can only barely cover a world and cannot spread outward. In the final analysis, their underworld is not the underworld of the past, and the foundation is too different. Soul-calling beads are like this. Things, now, they only have one in their hands. If there are a few more, the strength of the underworld may be more than doubled. Please step back first. I will be in retreat during this period. I have a hunch that I am very close to the realm of the immortal king. The lord of the underworld said calmly. Yes. The figure in armor bowed and slowly retreated. Next to him, the figure shrouded in black mist also bowed. Just as he was about to retreat, he suddenly heard the voice of the lord of the underworld again. During this period of time, you secretly search for the whereabouts of the underworld emperor in the earthly immortal realm. It would be best if you can bring him back. If you cannot bring him back, inform me as soon as possible. The lord of the underworld said in a deep voice. Since the other party can create the 6 paths of reincarnation, it can be seen that the other party has obtained a lot of inheritance. At least in terms of the 6 paths of reincarnation, this important treasure, it is much more perfect than his own inheritance. If the Hades Emperor can be captured if you come here, you will be able to make up for your shortcomings. By then, you will become the immortal king and obtain another inheritance from the underworld, which can be said to be 2 birds with 1 stone. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 488. A few days later. The earthly immortal world rarely entered a state of calm. It's not that they blocked the underworld, but that the underworld suddenly stopped its offensive for some unknown reason, and all the underworld creatures were entrenched in the territory they had occupied. No more steps forward. At the beginning of. Many people in the earthly immortal world are confused. Some of them want to fight to the death, while others are ready to eat pots of pulp to welcome Master Wang. Result. The underworld army is not coming. This move left them a bit overwhelmed. Good thing. Soon after, someone was well informed and found out the reason. It turned out that 3 powerful men in the underworld died near Dawang City. This news was like a hurricane, blowing across the earth and sweeping every world. Many people who had despaired have regained hope. Is this the end of the Senior Tianji poster? With Senior Tianji building master taking action, it can be said that a mere underworld is nothing to worry about. Unfortunately, a few days passed. There was no more movement in the Tianji Tower, which made many hopeful people sink to the bottom of their hearts again. The owner of Tianji is really too mysterious. No one can stop him or guess what he wants to do. Maybe. From the beginning, the owner of Tianji had no intention of taking action, but the few people in the underworld were a bit blind and dared to take action near Dawang City. Therefore, Only then will he be suppressed and killed by the owner of Tianji Tower. After thinking about this, many people sighed inwardly. As a result, their life and death seemed to have little to do with Tianji Tower. The owner of Tianji didn't take action for them, he just felt that someone was challenging his majesty, so he killed him. During this period, the underworld army did not dare to act rashly, perhaps because they were intimidated by the senior master of Tianji. In the earthly immortal realm, within a sect, there was an old saint king, standing in the main hall, looking in the direction of the Xianguang realm, and said softly. Next to him, there were several people standing side by side, each of them had white beards and white hair, and looked haggard, as if they will fall directly into the ground in the next second. This is the foundation of this sect. When the whole world is about to be destroyed, they cannot help but continue to be in seclusion. But this shock may not last long. An old man shook his head slightly and said softly. The master of Tianji Tower is indeed very strong, but he obviously doesn't care about the creatures of all races. Maybe it won't be long before the underworld in the Xianguang realm discovers that as long as Tianji Tower is not provoked, that day the owner of the machine building will not target them. In this way, the earthly immortal world still cannot escape the situation of destruction. If you want the earthly immortal realm to be preserved, unless someone reaches the immortal realm, and it must be several digits or above. Next to her, there was an old woman in purple clothes with cloudy eyes and a rotten aura. She sighed softly and said, in the final analysis, our Earth immortal world is facing a different situation from the original Zixuan world. At the beginning, although there were true immortals in the earthly immortal realm, they were not subordinate to each other. As long as a true immortal was born in the Zixuan realm, both worlds would be intimidated. But now in the Xianguang realm, there are more than a dozen people in the immortality realm, and they all surrender to the underworld and obey the orders of the Lord of the underworld. A mere one or two in the immortality realm may not be a threat to them at all. These words came out. Everyone present felt a little heavy. This is an almost unsolvable problem in front of the Earth immortal realm. Many people know it well, but they have nothing to do. Just the word underworld is like a mountain. They were so pressed that they could hardly breathe. More importantly, the old man who spoke at the beginning muttered, the creatures in the underworld are almost immortal. They appear to be more than a dozen people in the immortality realm, but in fact they are. Speaking of which, he did not continue. But everyone present understood that in a sense, the number of immortal beings was no longer important. Even if the earthly immortal realm also took out a dozen immortals, so what? Just consuming the other party can kill them. What's even more frightening is that every time one person falls on one's side, one more person is added to the opponent's side. The more they fight, the stronger they get. Who can withstand this? If there was a way to break this weird method of immortality in the underworld, that would be an easy solution. The old woman in purple clothes had silvery hair and said in a hoarse voice. It is said that the immortal Lord has already gone to the Tianyuan realm. I think with his strength, in addition to becoming a figure in the immortal realm, he may be able to get a way to crack the supernatural powers of the underworld. Someone said softly in the hall. Before he finished speaking, he took a deep breath, looked around at everyone, and said softly, besides, I have another way. I don't know what you think. Any solution? Everyone in the hall looked over at the first time. The underworld in the Xianguang realm is quite similar to the underworld in our original earthly immortal realm. Do you think there is some connection between the two? This person said eloquently. You mean Emperor Hades? The old man in white frowned and said. In fact, as early as the day when the underworld of Xianguang realm appeared, many creatures in the earthly immortal world thought of the underworld created by Emperor Hades. Many people believed that the underworld of Xianguang realm was caused by Emperor Hades. But various things later confirmed that this was not the case. At the very least, Emperor Hades would not kill the creatures in the Earth Immortal world. After all, she was also a member of the Earth Immortal world, but her ambition was much greater than that of many people. Good. The person who spoke nodded and said softly, "We are both from the underworld. I suspect that Emperor Hades may know some of the secrets of the underworld. Maybe she also knows how to crack the immortality method of the underworld." There was silence in the hall. This is possible, not impossible, but the key is to find the Hades Emperor. At the beginning, Emperor Ming was besieged by True Lord Changsheng and Emperor Bai Li, and his whereabouts are still unknown. It would be difficult for her to help the immortal world. The old woman said in a deep voice. But you must not forget that the current underworld of Xianguang realm is difficult to resist. To obtain their secrets, I am afraid that you will have to pay a huge price in Tianji Tower. Even if several forces join forces, they probably won't be able to buy this news. The old man said in a deep voice. These words are true. Although every news about Tianji Tower is true, its value is equally extraordinary. Regarding the news about the underworld of Xianguang realm, if you think about it with your toes, you will understand that ordinary people cannot afford it. But it is relatively simple to buy the whereabouts of Emperor Hades. It is also a shortcut to obtain the weaknesses of the underworld in the Xianguang realm from Emperor Underworld. It's easy to buy the whereabouts of Emperor Hades, but what if Emperor Underworld doesn't cooperate? Asked the old woman. Is there anything in this world that the owner of Tianji cannot solve? The old man smiled mysteriously and said slowly. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 489. The four words Tianji Luzo came out. In the main hall. Suddenly there was no sound. Yes. Is there anything in this world that the owner of Tianji cannot solve? If so, it must be that the price is not right. As long as the price is in place, not to mention that Emperor Hades doesn't want to help the earthly immortal realm, but she has an unforgettable hatred towards the earthly immortal realm. It is estimated that as long as the owner of the Tianji building comes forward, the other party must rush to help. However, the question now is how much Underworld Emperor knows about the Underworld. As far as they know, there seems to be no one who can be resurrected from the dead in Underworld Emperor's Underworld. Quite true. There are many existences similar to dead souls. But after these people were killed, they were all wiped out. Because of this, no one took Hades to heart, they just thought that she knew some crooked ways. The earthly immortal realm has been passed down for a long time, and in the endless history, this kind of miraculous supernatural power has never been seen before, and some of the spells are even more terrifying than those shown by Hades. But most of these techniques have been lost in time. If Emperor Hades didn't know about the underworld's method of resurrection from the dead, he might have to pay a huge price if he wanted to get information from the senior master of Tianji Tower. The old woman said softly. No matter what, we have to take a trip. The old man in white pursed his lips and said. Even if it is 1 in a billion hope, we cannot give up. After all, the underworld in the Xianguang realm will not be stable for too long. During this period, if we do not do something, the next situation will be countless times more severe. The old man's words fell silent, and the hall fell silent. Not long after, the old woman coughed lightly. She took a step forward and said slowly, why don't I come forward and go to the Tianji Tower to see if I can get the whereabouts of Emperor Hades? Can. Other people in the hall nodded slightly. Then, everyone took out a storage ring and placed it on the old woman's hand. Whether it's the Emperor of Hades or the underworld of the mysterious light realm, this news is valuable. There's only so much we can do. The next thing we need to do is get rid of fellow Taoists. Don't worry, I understand. The old woman nodded, and after accepting the storage ring, she stepped out, and her figure disappeared on the spot. When she reappeared, She was thousands of miles away. After a slight flicker, the old woman completely disappeared from the world. She watched the old woman leave. Go. Everyone in the hall frowned tightly, hoping that the other party could bring back good news. At the same time, Xianguang realm. In a side hall, three figures stand facing each other. It has been several days, and the whereabouts of Hades are still unknown. Where is she hiding? In the hall, a man in white clothes stood tall and said in a deep voice. His name is Suchangluo. He is one of the creatures that surrendered to the underworld in the early years. He has a high position in the underworld. Although he is not an undead, he is still quite popular. The trust of the Lord of the underworld. This is also the biggest reason why he can stand here today. Emperor Hades was able to establish an underworld in the first place, which shows that her methods are extraordinary, and she became a true immortal in just 100,000 years. Her potential should not be underestimated. Maybe. The figure wearing armor glanced at the other two people and said softly, give her some time, her achievements will not be lower than the Lord in the future. Suchangluo turned around, glanced at the creature wearing armor, and said indifferently, fellow Taoist is exaggerating. What kind of person is the Lord? How could it be compared to the Emperor of the underworld? It took our Lord nearly 1,000,000 years to get to this point. The figure wearing armor said in a deep voice. As far as he knew, when the Lord had been practicing for 100,000 years, he was as powerful as the underworld emperor. To a certain extent, the underworld emperor was even more amazing than the Lord. It's just that Emperor Hades started a little later. Moreover, he was limited by the world. If Emperor Hades was given the same world, he had reason to believe that the other party's achievements would not necessarily be lower than those of his own master. I have learned a little bit about the underworld established by the underworld emperor from the people in the earthly immortal world. It is just a ragtag group of people. However, some of the techniques did come from the underworld. Suchangluo said unconcernedly. Fellow Taoist, have you ever thought that Emperor Hades thought that the time was not ripe, so he did not use some methods at all? For example, 6 paths of reincarnation, this unique method of refining weapons in the underworld, even the Lord may not be able to come up with, but Emperor Hades took the lead in refining it. From this, we can see that she must have a lot of inheritance about the underworld. The figure wearing armor said eloquently. As soon as these words came out, Suchangluo was speechless. He also understood the importance of the 6 paths of reincarnation to the underworld. No one can deny the importance of this secret treasure. The Emperor of the underworld holds the 6 paths of reincarnation, and is now missing. We have been searching for several days but have not found any clues. Do you have any suggestions? Suchangluo asked. No. The figure wearing armor shook his head. Not long ago, the immortal lord of the earthly immortal realm took action against Emperor Hades. After Emperor Hades was severely injured, news about her disappeared. No one knows her whereabouts so far. Our underworld has just merged with the earthly immortal world, so finding the underworld emperor is as difficult as climbing to heaven. The figure wearing armor couldn't help but clenched his palms, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. With the talent of Emperor Hades, they couldn't help but give them a sense of urgency. If it were someone else, that would be it. Even if they are stunning, they can't do it in a short time. Become the immortal king. But the Hades Emperor is different. She also holds the inheritance of the underworld, and no one knows how many inheritances she has received. If she gets too much, and knows many of the shortcomings of the underworld, then people like them will be in danger. As long as Emperor Hades is breaking through a realm and reaching the realm of immortality, people in the Xianguang realm really have no good way to deal with Emperor Hades. After all, the other party has already practiced the 6 paths of reincarnation. This important treasure may be lethal to other creatures. Generally speaking, but when dealing with yin spirits, it can be said that you have a lot of control, one by one, and none of them can escape. If you are not careful, you will be sent to reincarnation by the other party. What is immortality? In front of the 6 paths of reincarnation, it is just a joke. Is there no other way? Suchangluo frowned and murmured. I learned from the mouths of the creatures in the earthly immortal world that every time Emperor Hades makes a move, he will summon countless soldiers from an extremely gloomy world. I suspect that Emperor Hades controls a small world. Maybe, she is hiding in another world. The figure in armor seemed to have remembered something and spoke. Oh! Suchangluo's expression changed. He vaguely remembered that the Lord once said such a world. Now that he heard the other party's words, he blurted out. Underworld. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 490. Hades. These 2 words. When the underworld once swept across the heavens, it was synonymous with the supreme world, and for a time it suppressed the name of the immortal world and other supreme worlds. Countless worlds have become subordinates of the underworld. Today, the word underworld appeared again, and everyone in the hall couldn't help but change their expressions. This is too incredible. This world had already been destroyed when the underworld was defeated. It had lost its traces in all the heavens and worlds. If it reappeared, its influence would be terrifying. If they were in the hands of Emperor Hades, their hands and feet would get cold just thinking about it. But then, several people in the hall reacted. It seems unlikely that the Hades Emperor controls the underworld. How could such a huge world fall into the hands of a true immortal? Maybe she found some small world and refined it into a world similar to the underworld. Regardless of whether it is the underworld or not, the Emperor of Hades is hiding in it. If he cannot come out, there are countless small worlds in the heavens and the world. How can we find them? Suchangluo frowned and said in a deep voice. There's no way to find it. Beside the main hall, a black mist surged, and a black figure stood in the middle. He seemed to be standing in another world, and no one could see his face clearly. After he entered the main hall, he never spoke. He never expected at this time, he actually took the initiative to speak. What to do? Suchangluo sighed softly. The master has already retreated and is preparing to break through the immortal king. He will not be able to leave the retreat in a short time. He is waiting for others, let alone disturbing him. If he waits for the day when he comes out, he will wait for him. No one has found the whereabouts of Hades Emperor yet. How the Lord will react can be imagined just by thinking about it with his toes. Correct. Suchangluo seemed to have thought of something. His eyes lit up and he said, if I remember correctly, the Tianji building master in Tianyuan world is a being who claims to know everything. If he takes action, he should know the whereabouts of Emperor Hades, right? I remember that the creatures in the earthly immortal world once said that the reason why Emperor Hades became a true immortal was all thanks to the help of Master Tianji. For such a person, it should not be difficult for ordinary Emperor Underworld. The figure in armor raised his head, glanced at Suchangluo, with awe-inspiring eyes, and said, do you know what you are talking about? Master Tianji, you just killed 3 immortal Taoists in my underworld, and now you want to seek help from Master Tianji. How did you know he would help us? Speaking of which, the figure in armor snorted coldly and said in a deep voice, what if he deliberately tells us false news and leads our underworld elites into a dead end? In the past, they didn't care about dead ends or dead ends. After all, they and others couldn't die at all. But it's different now. The master of Tianji really has a way to kill them. If he wants to trick them to death, don't be too embarrassed. Simple. Now that the underworld is hostile to Tianji Tower, and his master is in retreat, before he and others can avoid the master of Tianji Tower, Suchangluo actually wants to provoke Tianji Tower. No matter how you look at it, it is not a wise move. Looking at the current huge world, besides the owner of Tianji, who else do you think can find the Hades Emperor? On our own, we can't even find any clues about Emperor Hades. How are you going to explain to the Lord when he comes out of seclusion? Suchangluo's face turned cold, and his tone became colder. Rather than provoking the master of Tianji, he didn't want to see his master leave seclusion. If he failed to complete the task, God knows how the master would punish him and others. At present, although the relationship between the underworld and Tianji Tower is not harmonious, there is always a way. If we don't give it a try, how can we know whether the owner of Tianji Tower still has prejudices against our underworld? Suchangluo spoke again and said. I still said the same thing. How did you know that what Tianji poster told you was not a dead end? The figure wearing armor said slowly. There are too many terrifying places in the world. In some places, even if the immortal king enters, he is in danger of falling. If the master of Tianji tells himself and others, then a place. It can be said that everyone in the underworld rushes there, and there is not enough to fill the gap between teeth. If you send someone to verify it in advance, it will be fine. Suchangluo said casually. He has also considered this and naturally doesn't take it to heart. Send someone to verify. The figure in armor sneered and said lightly, I think the people you sent may have been shot to death by the owner of Tianji Tower as soon as they stepped into Tianji Tower. Killing 3 people in the immortal realm at once, and leaving 3 people unable to resurrect, it shows that the strength of the Tianji building master is terrifying and unpredictable. If he doesn't like the underworld, let alone give advice, he is a person from the underworld, just get close. It is also very possible that Dawang City was killed to sacrifice the flag. You. Suchangluo looked ugly and wanted to retort. But he hadn't finished speaking yet. Standing in the corner, the black mist rolled slightly, and the figures in it became much clearer. Among them was a pair of crimson. His eyes opened. The entire hall was covered with a layer of misty luster. This luster was extremely attractive. Even a person like Suchangluo, who was in the immortality realm, shut his mouth immediately, not daring to say more. Word. You two, stop arguing. The figure in the black mist spoke hoarsely and said slowly, it is a fact that the master of Tianji now has a clear attitude towards the underworld, but in the final analysis, it was he who pulled the Xianguang realm from chaos. Moreover, after he killed 3 immortals, he did not continue to attack the underworld. There may be some room for change. Hearing this, the other 2 people nodded silently. This is a fact. With the strength shown by Tianji Luzu at this time, if you want to destroy the underworld, you really don't need to spend too much effort. You can kill 3 people with 1 blow. Immortality level. In other words, if the other party attacks with all its strength, it will not be a big problem to kill the master of the house. I and others are worried so much, it can be said that the eggs are useless, and whether the underworld can continue to exist, it all depends on the mood of the master of Tianji. So, for this reason, the lord of the underworld is unwilling to succumb to others, and wants to quickly break through the immortal king realm, and then get rid of the situation of being controlled by others. Fellow Taoist, do you think it is feasible for us to go to Tianji Tower? Suchangluo said in surprise. You can give it a try. The figure in the black mist said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, it was equivalent to making a decision. Immediately, Suchangluo's face showed a bit of joy, and he said quickly, I will arrange the people right now. Go to the Tianji Tower to find out the whereabouts of Emperor Hades. Can. The figure in the black mist glanced at Suchangluo, and said with a little worry, don't let the people from the underworld come out. Pick a few people from the immortal world to go to the underworld for us. In this way, the losses to the underworld can be minimized. Even if they are beaten to death by the owner of Tianji, they will not feel sad at all. Fellow Taoist, don't worry, I understand in my heart. Suchangluo nodded, then bowed to the two of them, turned around and left, and quickly went down to make arrangements. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 491. Tianyuan World. The Deserted City. During this period, the number of cultivators in Dawang City increased a lot. The main reason is that there are too many yin spirits in the Tianyuan world. They cannot be killed or beaten. There is really no safe place except Dawang City. Even though many people knew about it, these yin spirits were temporarily quiet. But still no one wants to go out and try. Just in case. At this time, what should I do if the underworld from the Xianguang realm comes over? Even the original Earth Immortal realm could not be defeated. Not to mention a more powerful mysterious light world. Finally arrived at Dawang City. At this time, a figure walked over from a distance. He was dressed in white and had a tall figure. His eyebrows slanted into his temples. Anyone who looked at him would sigh, he is such a troubled young man. It's a pity. The people around him turned a blind eye to him, as if they had never seen this person before. He came to the Tianji building and stepped into it. As soon as he stepped in, he saw two people in front of him, one of whom was the owner of the Tianji building. As for the other person, he has also seen it. It was the person who stood up to resist the invasion of the Xianguang realm. The man came back to his senses and saluted respectfully. Junior Chang Sheng, I have met the senior Tianji building master. The immortal lord. Li Yun raised his head and looked at the person who came. With a hint of news in the corner of his mouth, he gently raised his hand and said, "Get up, no need to be polite." "Thank you, senior." The immortal lord straightened up, then looked at the middle-aged man beside him, bowed slightly, and saluted again. Previously, the immortal world suffered a great disaster. "Thank you for your help, senior." Hearing this, Taisha felt slightly ashamed, and he also returned the courtesy. "This is what I should do." He is not the master of Tianji, so he cannot bear this gift in his life. After all, he can clearly see the strength of the other party. It is estimated that it will not be long before he will be a person in the immortality realm. After breaking through the immortality realm, he will be at the same level as him. More importantly, the other party didn't know that the reason why Xianguang realm chased after him was because of his own reasons. If the true Lord Changshen knew the truth, he wouldn't salute so respectfully, but it's hard to say. Taisha came back to his senses. "Come, look at the immortal lord, then look at Li Yun, and say respectfully, since there are guests coming to the door, it will be inconvenient for me to stand here." Moreover, thanks to the senior's treatment during this period, the junior's injury has recovered greatly, so he will say goodbye today. With that said, Taisha was about to turn around and leave. The moment he raised his feet, Li Yun said slowly, "Don't worry, you two have the same purpose, so it doesn't matter if you stay here, and the immortal lord must also need it. Your help." "Well." The immortal lord's expression froze, and then he was overjoyed. He had seen this senior's combat prowess before. With one blow, he could directly severely injure a person of the same level. This kind of strength goes without saying. If we can continue to get help from this senior, the earthly immortal world will be saved. And if I get it and crack the key to immortality in the underworld, and with the help of this senior, let alone the earthly immortal world, I can turn the crisis around, even counter-attacking the Xianguang world will not be a big problem. What the senior poster said is right. If this senior has nothing important to do, it is better to stay here temporarily. After all, when the Xianguang realm comes, both the Tianyuan realm and the earthly immortal realm should unite and work together to fight against foreign enemies. The immortal Lord said sincerely. This. Taisha pondered for a moment and said softly, in that case, then I have the audacity to stay here, he said. He set his sights on the immortal Lord. Taisha really wanted to know what kind of news the immortal Lord wanted to get when he came to Tianji Tower today. Senior. The immortal Lord did not remain silent for too long. He spoke directly. Did you know that the outside world has been in complete chaos these past few days? Especially the earthly immortal world. You want to say underworld? Li Yun said with a half smile. He was very clear about the thoughts of the immortal Lord. He obviously had many questions in his mind, but he just went round and said that he was just worried that he was on the side of the underworld. Nothing can be hidden from the seniors. The immortal Lord nodded and admitted directly. Naturally, I know that after all, I was the one who integrated the Xianguang realm. Li Yunfan said calmly. All living beings in the world know about this matter. Whether he admits it or not is no longer important. The juniors admire the strength of the seniors. The immortal Lord Changshen's heart thumped. At this time, Master Tianji admitted this matter. To be honest, it is not a good thing for the earthly immortal world. Because before the world merged, with the strength of Master Tianji, he must have known that the Xianguang realm, what a mess it was inside. But even so, the senior still integrated it. As a result, it is unknown what the senior was thinking. Do you think I will favor the underworld? Li Yun said with a smile. The juniors dare not have this idea, but the creatures in the underworld are very cruel and can drive the undead. This method is really against the law of heaven. I wonder if the seniors have a way to break the magical power of the underworld. The immortal Lord said in a deep voice. No one in the world wants to be driven by others after death, let alone reincarnation. How and what kind of reincarnation one wants depends on the person's face. What if, in this life, I am a fairy king, and in the next life, the underworld turns me into a pig demon? How can I explain this? I guess no one can stand it. Because of this, as soon as the underworld appears, he will be besieged by all the worlds. It's just a soul-calling bead. Li Yun said casually, this is a secret treasure from the underworld. It can only drive the creatures under the immortal king. After reaching the immortal king, this secret treasure will be ineffective. At the peak of the underworld, the number of soul-summoning beads was countless. But with the destruction of the underworld, the number of soul-calling beads disappeared. And in the underworld of the Xianguang realm, there happened to be some. Hearing this sentence, not only Taishu, but also the immortal Lord raised their eyebrows. A few. Instead of one? You know, one soul-calling bead is terrifying enough, but if there are a few, the problem will be big. No one knows how many undead souls the underworld can summon. Although it is limited to immortal kings and below, how many immortal kings are there in the current worlds? It is estimated that there is only one such as the senior Tianji building master. It can be said that except for the owner of Tianji, everyone must be controlled by the soul summoning bead. Once they die, they will immediately join the underworld. There is no second possibility. Dare I ask, senior, how many soul calling beads are there in the underworld? How can I make the soul summoning bead ineffective or break it? The immortal Lord asked quickly.